Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. We're in a new age of evidence these days. When a murder occurs, the investigation begins and the subpoenas start flying. And these days, the first thing everyone wants to see is everyone's cell phone. And in the case of accused killer Karen Reed, it seems her defense attorneys, not the prosecution, are much more interested in everyone's cell phone evidence. Now, I've covered this case in depth on my weeknight show, Closing Arguments, and what you're about to see are some of the most important moments from that program as I investigate the tragic death of Officer John O'Keefe.
Canton, Massachusetts is a small town where it seems everyone knows each other. There's a small, classic downtown area featuring places to eat, shop, places to socialize. And on Friday, January 28th, 2022, some of the locals were gathering at two of the local bars, C.F. McCarthy's and across the street at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. Boston police officer John O'Keefe met some buddies at C.F. McCarthy's early in the evening and then was joined by his girlfriend Karen Reed. Then they went across the street to the Waterfall to see some more friends, including John's old neighbors, Chris and Julie Albert. Chris owns the local downtown pizzeria and had been texting with John. When midnight arrived, the Waterfall was closing, so a group of folks from the Waterfall headed to Chris's brother's house, Brian Albert. But Chris and Julie did not go. When Karen and John arrived in front of Brian Albert's home, John exited Karen's SUV. At this point, what happens next is not clear. Prosecutors say John was murdered by Karen, who backed over him, while the defense says he was ambushed inside the Alberts home and put on the lawn to die in the cold and to frame Karen. Karen is now on trial for murder, and today the jury heard the critical cross-examination of the homeowner, Brian Albert. Questions about his phone, a double butt dial, and the back exit to the basement leading to the backyard. Tonight, we examine the testimony, the body language, and the cross-examination as we continue to investigate the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe.
I'm bringing a special guest, body language expert, author of the New York Times bestselling book, You Can't Lie to Me, and creator of the new free, like you don't pay for it, newsletter, In the Driver's Seat. Janine Driver is with us. Janine, thanks so much for joining us. This witness is extremely important, Brian Albert. He's the homeowner. And what I want to do is play a piece of his testimony because if the jury believes him, it's going to be really difficult, I think, for the defense to try to sell what they believe happened here to this jury. But if they don't believe him, I think that's a huge problem for the prosecution. So I want you to tell us what you notice about his testimony, if there's anything about it that strikes you that is of interest. You ready?
Yes, ready.
Okay, here he is, Brian Albert. And then Janine on the other side of this will explain what, if anything, she notices from his testimony.
So your testimony is that you get in bed after being on a road trip all day long, then at restaurants, and at bars, then at a get-together at your house. And when you go to bed, you don't charge your phone?
No. I had the phone on the bed with me.
Why would you have the phone on the bed?
We have 5 kids, and you know, if somebody was trying to call or if I needed to reach them, it's just kind of a habit I do. I put my reading glasses and my phone in bed with me.
Sir, did you make any phone calls after you went to bed between the hours of 1:45 a.m. and 6:30 a.m.?
Yes.
Who did you call?
I inadvertently called Brian Higgins.
What time?
I don't recall the exact time. After 2.
2:22 and 35 seconds. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Did you speak to Brian Higgins at any point between 1:45 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. that night?
No.
You say you inadvertently called him at 2:22 in the morning.
Yes.
How did you inadvertently call him?
Well, I don't know because it was inadvertent.
So I have to explain that.
Well, it's kind of like a butt dial.
So according to your phone records, you placed a call to him, and then 17 seconds later, he returned a call to you that lasted 22 seconds. Correct?
That's what the records reflect, yes.
When you woke up in the morning, you obviously checked your phone. Did you not?
I don't know if I did.
Are you telling this jury that the call that came into your phone was a missed call, or did you answer it?
I did not answer it.
So it would have been a missed call.
I just know I didn't answer the call.
So it would have been a missed call.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that to be a fact. I just know I didn't answer the phone call.
Okay.
I missed the call, yes.
Okay, Ginny, he's a police officer, so he's testified before. I mean, like more than 100 times, he said. So what are your thoughts? What are you seeing? What are you noticing?
It goes to show you just because you're a lawyer, Vinny, or you're in law enforcement, doesn't mean you can get ahead of the body language. So we see this tightening of his cheeks and his lips happening. This is a spike in stress and anxiety. We often see people doing this when lying. Now let's play devil's advocate. We also see it in people who are worried about being believed. So we could have both sides here. However, it's every time we're talking about these phone calls. To me, Vinny, and you at home, this is Jodi Arias taking out the camera cord, the camera memory stick, throwing the camera in the washing machine and thinking she's in the free. I think this is the smoking gun of this case because this A is loaded with deception. B, we see numerous hotspots happening here, high stress, a little bit of contempt, but this smirking this thing that's happening with his face, you know who did that, Vinny? The Menendez brothers. So when the Menendez brothers were, it's involuntary. He can't control it. Doesn't matter that he was famous on a TV show about cops. Doesn't matter. So he is leaking massive signs of potential deception here. And I want to go back a little bit with Brian Albert in the clip from earlier. He talked about regarding selling the house. The question was, you know, isn't it weird timing that this happened right after John gets killed? And he says the words pre-incident. No, I called a realtor the year before or a couple of years before, this pre-incident. No cop, I'm telling you right now, ask all the cops, take a survey over on Court TV. No cop calls another cop who is, you're saying this cop was murdered by Karen Reed, and you're calling it a pre-incident? No, you would say killed, found dead. Pre-incident is minimizing language. And know who uses minimizing language? Cops, to get you to tell us the truth. We don't say, did you rape her? We say, did you force yourself on her to lessen the crime? And people who are lying, you know who else? Not Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp said exactly what we hear from Amber Heard. I did not hit her, abuse her, whatever it was. But Amber Heard, minimizing language. We see this with liars. I think this is the smoking gun. I think this is Jodi Arias thinking she took all the evidence away because she took the memory card out when she killed Travis Alexander. This is a smoking gun. If I was a betting woman, which I'm not, I would bet 100, all my cards, all my money, Karen Reed is innocent. She did not do it.
Coming up next.
This getting rid of the phone, and then Brian Higgins also admitting to the feds that he got rid of his phone, and they had conversations about getting rid of the phone. I mean, it's a smoking gun. There's no reason why he would get rid of it the day before. And then to bring up his birthday on September 4th, which, what, you waited another 18 days to get a phone after your birthday? Usually you get birthday gifts, you know, from people. So I didn't understand that whole logic of his birthday bringing that up.
Scripps Newsline is a different kind of nightly news show because some stories really deserve a deeper conversation.
Scripps Newsline, weeknights at 9. Find with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app today.
If you're a witness in a murder case, your phone is important. The data on that phone could be crucial. And that's why judges often enter orders to preserve that evidence and preserve that data. Here's more of our investigation of the phone evidence in the Karen Reed murder trial.
Mr. Lally said that the defense had filed a motion to ask for the phones to be preserved.
And anything else?
That's what I remember him saying.
Did you volunteer that, oh my goodness, I just upgraded my phone last week conveniently. I don't have that phone anymore.
No.
You didn't say that to Mr. Lally?
No.
You just took the information that he gave you and hung up the phone and went about your business.
Yes.
Without notifying him that the very phone that he had just ordered you to preserve had just been destroyed days earlier.
No, the phone wasn't destroyed. I upgraded the phone.
Okay, let me lay the groundwork here. So the prosecutor calls up Brian Albert, and says, listen, don't do anything with your phones. There's a motion, there's an order from the judge saying you got to preserve everything that's on your phone. But apparently he had just upgraded his phone. So what impact does all that have? Does he know that it has impact? We'll take a listen to more of this cross-examination about the data in his phone versus the data in his phone after the upgrade.
How long have you had a phone? That's an iPhone.
Years.
How many times have you upgraded your iPhone?
Multiple times.
Every single time you upgraded. You know that the phone prior, the data's destroyed on it, correct?
Usually my contacts come over, my photos come over. So
that's a backup.
no, I don't think I have that on backup, but okay.
Irrespective, you didn't tell Mr. Lally that you had gotten rid of that phone.
I was not asked that, and I didn't tell him that.
I see. You felt like if you weren't asked that, you didn't need to volunteer it, even though the conference call was specifically about preserving your phone pursuant to a judge's order. Correct?
What was the question?
You didn't offer to Mr. Lally that you had gotten rid of the very phone that he was telling you had to be preserved due to a judge's order.
I did not.
So is this a big deal? Is it not? Let's bring in our guest. Joining me, Karen Reed supporter and Karen Reed expert, Nick Rocco. Criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr., who at one time represented Colin Albert, does not anymore. And the YouTuber behind Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin Lenahan, is with us as well. Nick, I'll begin with you. Is this a big deal for the defense? Is this a big deal for Karen Reed? If so, why?
Well, I believe it's a big deal because today on stand, Brian Albert has been inconsistent until, what Alan Jackson mentions, this other hearing. That is the federal grand jury that the defense is referring to. They just cannot speak about that in open court in front of the jury. So, Brian Albert doesn't remember receiving this on the 23rd and the 24th of the preservation order until Alan Jackson and Greg Henning, which is Albert's attorney, came to the stipulation out in the hallway that it in fact was received on that day. And when confronted with that, then all of a sudden it turned into, well, yeah, I upgraded it on the 22nd, which was hours before receiving this preservation order. And like he told the feds as well, oh, it's a coincidence. This getting rid of the phone, and then Brian Higgins also admitting to the feds that he got rid of his phone, and they had conversations about getting rid of the phone. I mean, it's a smoking gun. There's no reason why he would get rid of it the day before. And then to bring up his birthday on September 4th, which, what, you waited another 18 days to get a phone after your birthday? Usually you get birthday gifts, from people. So I didn't understand that whole logic of his birthday bringing that up. But
Kevin, do you think it's a big deal?
Look, I listened to Janine, the body language expert, and I think she does a very good job of highlighting signs of anxiety, and those could be indications of someone not being quite forthcoming. However, what she doesn't do, and what Nick is not doing, what nobody seems to do on the whole side of this case, is ask what else could be causing someone to fudge testimony.
I asked
anything.
to fudge testimony. I asked what else would throw the body language off. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, you did. You made a great point. But what I'm saying is there are other things on someone's phone that they may not want to be made public. And this is why this could never be a smoking gun, even if they proved that Brian deliberately destroyed all the data in his phone, because we don't know what he was destroying and why. And that's why you have to look at all of the other evidence in the case.
All right. Joseph Krowski Jr., let me ask you, these phone records, he upgrades the phone records disappear. This is nothing that you could get from the phone company? And if not, do you think this is a problem for the prosecution? Because you've got a witness who all of a sudden, the phone that I had, I don't have the same one. We lost some of the records here.
Well, I think it's a problem for the prosecution anytime you're spending a half hour talking about butt dialing instead of a cracked tail light and a confession from the defendant. I certainly think that Adam Lally has to reclaim the narrative a little bit here. But it's not a smoking gun. It's what we call legally evidence of absence or proof of a negative. There is no substantive evidence that Hollywood Jackson is putting forward. Anyone that does this type of work knows that it's the company that stores all of the applicable data, the call logs, the text data, even some of the photos are backed up. And I would think that if a detective was going to be involved in a cover-up, he probably wouldn't have used his phone anyway.
Still to come.
How did you unlock your cell phone if you're laying in bed supposedly sleeping at that time, or if you weren't sleeping and you made that phone call by mistake? How did you miss that call 17 seconds later from Brian Higgins? And he said in the federal grand jury testimony that, it couldn't have been his wife, it couldn't have been his dog. So if it was answered, it had to have been him. But he also doesn't have a voicemail and he doesn't have a missed call. So somebody picked up that phone. And another coincidence, Jen McCabe Google searched at 2:27, 5 minutes later after those butt dials occurred.
This is true crime all the time.
We are live in courtrooms across the country.
We continue our gavel-to-gavel coverage.
This is what I love to do. If evidence is altered and destroyed by more than one witness, what does it prove? Well, if you ask Karen Reed's attorneys, it proves a conspiracy and a cover-up. Let's take a listen to more of the cross-examination here. Again, this is important.
Did you and Brian Higgins agree with each other that you were both going to get rid of your phones?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
No.
You testified at the other hearing in June of 2022, quote, "I don't recall saying that I was going to get rid of my personal phone to Brian Higgins. I may have said that. There's personal stuff on my personal phone, but I don't recall saying that to him, but I don't know. We had multiple conversations about things," end quote. You remember testifying to that?
Yes.
So you're not ruling out the fact that you may have told Brian Higgins that you intended to get rid of your phone, correct?
No.
You're not ruling out the fact that Brian Higgins may have told you that he intended to get rid of his phone?
No, I don't remember him saying that to me.
You're aware that Brian Higgins has also gotten rid of his phone, correct?
I am not aware of that until after the time you're talking about.
So, without qualifying your answer my question. As you sit here, you're aware that Brian Higgins has also gotten rid of his phone?
I know at some point Brian Higgins...
Yes or no, Mr. Albert?
Did he...
Objection, Your Honor.
Can you answer that, yes or no, sir?
Yes.
All right, Nick, a lot of time was spent, connecting Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, but there was also a lot of time spent separately talking about Colin Albert and Brian Albert covering up for Colin. Is there any connection between Brian Higgins and Colin Albert? Like, I'm trying to understand where the defense is going with this, or if this is classic spaghetti defense where you throw stuff up and see what sticks. Is there a connection between all three of these guys? Because that seems to be what the defense is kind of alluding to through their cross-examination.
Well, I don't see that they're trying to necessarily make a connection between Brian Higgins and Colin. I think today a lot of the focus was those phone calls that Higgins and Albert were doing, the butt dials of, how did you unlock your cell phone if you're laying in bed supposedly sleeping at that time, or if you weren't sleeping and you made that phone call by mistake, how did you miss that call 17 seconds later from Brian Higgins? And he said in the federal grand jury testimony that, it couldn't have been his wife, it couldn't have been his dog. So if it was answered, it had to have been him. But he also doesn't have a voicemail and he doesn't have a missed call. So somebody picked up that phone, and another coincidence, Jen McCabe Google searched at 2:27, 5 minutes later after those butt dials occurred. But as far as the connection between Higgins and Colin Albert, I didn't see much of that today. And I was in the courtroom. I will say that you could hear a pin drop in that courtroom today. Everybody was pretty laser focused. And one of the big things that when he said he upgraded his phone, he didn't destroy his phone, he upgraded it on September 22nd. The jury was not happy with that answer. I can say by the looks of it.
Well, let me do this. Let me just take a quick survey by raising your hand. Who here, before they go to bed at night, plugs their phone into the charger and puts it on the nightstand next to them?
Sometimes.
Sometimes you just throw it in the middle of the bed. And I know Joseph doesn't for sure. He comes home, whatever, get it in the morning. I'm a former prosecutor, and one thing I know about trying to prove your case is it has to be clean. Your witnesses must be honest, and the jury has to trust them. If they don't, it's a huge problem. That's why the credibility of everyone at the home where John O'Keefe died is crucial. The question now is, will the jury believe them or think they are hiding something? I'm Vinnie Politan. Thanks for joining the investigation, and I'll see you weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. Everyone is hooked on true crime these days. TV shows like this one, podcasts, and best-selling books, all really, really big. Now, the true crime story of the Doomsday couple, Chad and Lori Daybell, is a complicated one to write, but it seems Chad may have already started writing their story. But he did change the names of the main characters to James and Elena. I've covered this case in depth on my weeknight show, Closing Arguments, and what you're about to see are some of the most important moments from that program as I investigate the bizarre world of the Doomsday couple, Chad and Lori Daybell.
Were you looking for specific things outside of just compiling the story?
Yes, we were looking to see if we could confirm that events in the story happened in real life.
You'll start on Friday and read to the word forever.
Friday morning, October 26th, driving south on the freeway, a voice said, "You will meet an extraordinary woman today. It will change your life forever." This was shocking since such a thing seemed very unlikely at this conference.
Was there something about that first part that caught your attention in relation to what may have been going on in Chad and Lori's lives?
On October 26th, 2018, Chad Daybell was listed as a speaker at a Preparing a People conference in St. George, Utah. Melanie Gibb, or MG, we believe in this instance, confirmed that she was the one that introduced Chad and Lori as their mutual friend at this conference.
So there's a series of text messages Chad is sending Lori that contain this story about James and Elena. But what the testimony here is that this story about James and Elena is really about Lori and Chad. It's their story with different names. So we took a bunch of these text messages, we put them together, and our great producer, Cody, will read them for you right now.
But on the morning of October 26th, James arrived in St. George still a bit baffled by the message he had received. MG introduced James to her friend Elena. When their hands touched, he felt a shock pass through him and his heart started beating fast. He had glimpses of them walking dusty paths together, and he realized they had been married during the life of Jesus Christ, and they had been very close to him. At this time, their spirits could not be restrained any longer, and a long-awaited makeout session took place in that lobby. This was manifest in the mortal world to James and Elena through the scientific phenomenon known as loin fire. As they talked, James had a burning desire to make love to her, but he wasn't sure she felt the same way. The erotic tension continued throughout the afternoon. James could only think of her. His desire for her was indescribable. Thankfully, she had worn 16 layers of clothing to survive the 80-degree weather, so he was not fully aware that she truly had the body of a goddess. Her dimensions were exactly what he had always fantasized about. but that revelation would have to wait a month. They would both attend the same event in mid-November, and it seemed like that day would never arrive. He knew they had been married before, and they had been close friends with the Savior when he lived in Jerusalem. That relationship was now meant to continue in this lifetime. They hungered for each other, and he leaned forward and fulfilled a promise he had made to her a few days earlier. He gently kissed her tender lips, and the same heavenly electricity filled his entire body. The passionate magic they had felt many centuries earlier came surging back powerfully. James moved to the couch, and Elena straddled him effortlessly, as if they had done this thousands of times before. She fit perfectly on him, and they pressed their loins tightly against each other. They were still fully clothed, but the intensity of the intimacy was undeniable. Elena graciously allowed James to stay in a spare bedroom at her home that night. James anxiously hoped Elena would join him in the spare room. It took a while for everyone to settle into their beds, but once the house quieted down, James opened his door slightly and saw the wondrous sight of Elena approaching the room. They locked the door behind her and quickly got under the covers. They clung to each other and kissed desperately, hungrily. James placed his hands under her top and caressed her splendid breasts. She moaned happily and wrapped her legs around his waist. Only 2 layers of material separated their loins, and they could feel each other's most intimate body parts in detail. They knew their spirits were actually intimately joined together, and it felt like they had left the celestial world. They fit together perfectly, and their kisses were deep and frenzied. Their desire for each other was beyond compare.
That's a different kind of novel, right? Whoa. Let's bring back in our guests. Lori Vallow's Uncle Rex Connor is still with us tonight. And also joining us, nationally known psychotherapist and host of Talking Live and the Bite Size podcast, Dr. Robbie Ludwig. All right, Dr. Robbie, I didn't mean to make everyone blush tonight, but it's evidence in the case. I'm just presenting the evidence tonight. As you listen to that, though, and these are writings, what are you taking from this? Are you taking from it that this is all about the sex for Chad, the one who is writing all of this? His fantasy, erotic tension, his loin fire? Is he using the talk of religion as a way to get her on board with him? What do you think's going on here?
Well, Chad is very manipulative. We know that. And I think he was very attracted to Lori. That, you know, there was a transference there, we call it, that feeling of being at home. And it seems like she had that with Chad as well. And then they made it into something that it wasn't. This delusional story that they were married in another life and they were close to Jesus. And that's where a lot of the psychotic elements come in. But it sounds like that became part of their story. It's the grandiose story that they're not regular human beings. They're beyond regular human beings. And that's how they found each other. That's why they're meant for each other. And, you know, you have someone who's narcissistic and psychotic. And I think this is what we see, we see it fold out in front of our very eyes.
Rex, as I look at this relationship, and I've tried to figure it out many, many times through the years, but from a passage like this, it becomes clear to me that for Chad Daybell, it's, you know, we talk about the money, sex, the power, and all that. To him, I think that's the biggest driving force for him is the sex, is the eroticism, the loin fire, the fantasy, everything that Lori brings to the table that, as he described it, he wasn't getting in his vanilla relationship with Tammy. But from Lori, what I see is someone who's attracted to the perceived power of the prophet.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. That's what she was going for. I agree with both ends of that. But the bottom line is you have 2 evil idiots just playing into each other's stories. That's the way I like to describe it.
Coming up next.
They both had this delusional idea about grandiosity. What we know about Lori is her father was mentally ill. So, being the object of someone who is loving her, attracted to her, and that their relationship is God sent and somehow more than what it really is, appealed to her. So we have two very sick people, and they call it malignant narcissism, where you feel that you can make up the rules, do whatever you like. So I think many things can be true at the same time.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend. Will the truth finally be revealed?
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial, today, only on Court TV.
So, how did Chad and Lori end up together in bed? Did the prophet use his powers to seduce the bright-eyed blonde? Here's more of our investigation.
He knew she was one of the very few people on earth he could trust. James's spirit was so excited at this revelation that he shattered a thick veil that had been placed between these two souls during their mortal lives. The thick veil had been placed because of the unique, unparalleled love James and Elena had shared in previous lifetimes. That veil had prevented them from finding each other until this appointed day that would be remembered throughout the heavens as the true beginning of a spectacular mission that would save millions of souls and defeat the forces of darkness.
Was there something about this particular section of the story that stood out to you?
I believe the thing that stuck out the most was their spectacular mission, and then the concept of darkness. The light and dark was a concept that came up pretty frequently in the investigation.
And did you also see in there reference to James and Elena having shared previous lifetimes together?
Yes.
Or shared love in a previous lifetime?
Yes. There we go. Unparalleled love James and Elena had shared in previous lifetimes.
Did you ever learn anything in relation to Chad and Lori and believing they were married in previous lives?
Yes.
And then if you'll turn to the next page, page 7, and looking at the top there, could you read from James' physical attraction and read in the first 2 sentences?
James's physical attraction to Elena was almost overwhelming, but he was equally drawn to the spiritual energy that was radiating from her. As they talked, it was confirmed to him that they had indeed been married before and were eternal companions.
Dr. Rob, are you getting the feeling that she is the true believer here?
I'm getting the sense that it's fully a do, which means when two people have a joint delusion or psychosis, and that can happen with somebody who is a lover. And I think that's what we're seeing here. They both had this delusional idea about grandiosity. What we know about Lori is her father was mentally ill. So, being the object of someone who is loving her, attracted to her, and that their relationship is God sent and somehow more than what it really is, appealed to her. So we have two very sick people, and they call it malignant narcissism, where you feel that you can make up the rules, do whatever you like. So I think many things can be true at the same time. They could be sexually attracted to each other. They wanted each other. They're justifying their behavior. They're psychotic in a joint way. And so they make it about, being married in another lifetime when Jesus was alive. I think they're two very sick individuals who found each other, and it's like soulmates of the sickos.
Still to come.
She was always there for JJ, and that's the relationship that was on full display each time we saw him, and Tylee was just very loving, patient. She just enjoyed being with him. This strange religion of Lori's was doing becoming dangerous. And I think she was scared and there to protect herself and others. And so she had to take an active role.
And in visiting Tylee at her house, did you ever meet any of her family members?
I did, yes. I met Charles, I met Lori, JJ, I met Alex before too.
Did you make any observations about the nature of his relationship with Tylee?
Friendly. It seemed very much the normal teenage to uncle relationship. They joked around a lot, had a good relationship there, and I know he offered her a place to stay when she needed it.
Did she feel comfortable with Alex from what you could observe?
She did, yeah.
Could you just briefly describe kind of what you observed about Tylee's relationship with JJ?
Almost maternal in the sense that she was always there to make sure he was cared for. First priority was making sure his well-being was always taken care of, and she would be next.
Tylee Ryan was just a teenager when she was murdered, but the more you get to know Tylee, the clearer it becomes she was a very mature young lady who deserved so much more. Well, let me start here because we just heard some testimony and some discussion about the relationship between Tylee and Alex, your nephew, Alex Cox. Do you believe Alex killed his niece, Tylee?
Nothing surprises me in this case anymore, and as horrific as it sounds, and as much as I think they were close, yeah, I believe he did.
When I think about what happened to Tylee and the level of broken trust in her life, absolutely tragic when you put all the pieces together, and obviously it ends like incredibly bad, but between her mother, her uncle, and then her stepfather being shot and killed, her father, Joseph Ryan, and all the controversy surrounding all of that. I mean, this little girl was through a lot just as a teen, just getting to her teen years.
Yeah, she had a lot of her childhood, so to speak, taken away from her, which is tragic. But you know, even if Alex didn't do the killing, the way her body was treated, and the testimonies were so devastating when they said, well, we can't tell if this happened before or after she actually died, with some of these brutal actions against her. First of all, that's hard to imagine for any of us. I know it's so deprived, but it also makes me think other people may have been involved, and I hope there's an active investigation to determine that and to go after those people if they are.
Something else I wanted to talk about tonight, which was Tylee. We learned a little bit more about Tylee's relationship with her little brother, JJ. Let's take a listen to that testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just briefly describe kind of what you observed about Tylee's relationship with JJ?
Almost maternal in the sense that she was always there to make sure he was cared for. First priority was making sure his well-being was always taken care of, and she would be next.
That speaks volumes to me. Rex, your thoughts about that?
Love that description. That's what I observed. I didn't live in the same town as him, so I didn't have a lot of interaction, but we did stay with him when we went to Hawaii. And of course, at family events, we would get together. And that's just what I observed too. Tylee was, and I like the way her friend said it, not a, how did she say it? Not a mother figure, but she was always there for JJ. And that's the relationship. It was on full display each time we saw him, and Tylee was just very loving, patient. She just enjoyed being with him.
And you think about the order in which everything happened. If she has those sort of protective instincts for her little brother, if I'm the prosecutor, I'm going to argue there was a reason why Tylee had to go first, why she was the first one to be killed, because it would be much more difficult to get away with and to do something to JJ if Tylee is there, because she's going to protect, she's going to notice, she's going to say something.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think it cost Tylee her life, I think, going to Rexburg. And I think she went to Rexburg to protect JJ. She had a sense, I'm sure, of what was going on. I don't know that she thought her mother would go to that extreme, but I don't know. I don't know what she thought, but she was there to protect JJ, and it cost her life.
Now, I want to play for you a video. It's been blurred out, and it's from Arizona. But what I find really interesting is getting to hear Tylee. She's there with Lori, right? So it's daughter with mother, but it seems like the daughter is the one who is sort of taking care of her mother in this scenario. It's a police video, but let's take a listen. It's going to be difficult to see because they're going to blur out the images. Let's watch.
What's he texting you?
I have the text. He was basically just texting me. He was acting like that my son was in danger. I was worried about JJ's safety and things, and texting her like he's gonna. So he at first texted me, "You doing okay today?"
The dynamic I see there, Rex, is that Lori seems the one that's a little bit out of control, and Tylee is like the one calming things down and explaining to police. She's a teenager.
Well, she was one of those very adult teenagers, very feisty as a teenager too. A lot of adult attributes, but yeah, I think she took a role to, what's the right word, to try to temper Lori with the relationship with JJ and with other people, and to bring Lori into reality. I think a lot of us believe that Tylee knew how this strange religion of Lori's was becoming dangerous, and I think she was scared and there to protect herself and others. And so she had to take an active role on Lori's side.
I agree. That's what I heard in all of that. It seems every time I cover a story about a cult, it's about a man who uses his influence over his followers to seduce women, whether it's Charles Manson, David Koresh, or in this case, Chad Daybell. If there's a cult leader having sex with his followers. The question in this case, though, is did Chad commit murder to clear his pathway to sex with Lori? I'm Vinnie Politan. Thanks for joining the investigation, and I'll see you weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments.